What makes a good teammate for Phainon? I've spent hours upon hours testing Phainon in-game through certain means, and I'm here to inform you which supports you should be choosing for your Phainon team. First off, you need to understand how Phainon's kit works to follow along. You can click the video in the description for my basic breakdown of his kit. Second off, Phainon can still go through big changes in the beta, so chances are high that some character synergies will shift around, and I'll continue to explore how things shake out for Phainon and his teams as his kit is adjusted and changed. Third off, I won't be including any footage of Phainon in this video because I don't want Hoyo to assassinate me, but I'll include a link in the description to a video showcasing gameplay of all the Phainon teams I'm discussing in this video, so be sure to check that out. So, who are Phainon's best teammates? Is it just about who makes him do the most damage, or which support helps him stack his ultimate faster? Through my many hours of testing and zero cycling with Phainon, I've put together a chart that guides you through which characters to pick for your Phainon team. So let's walk through each of the supports who made it onto the chart and explore how much they offer Phainon. First things first, Phainon can run sustainless, aka teams with no healer or shielder, more easily than other characters. He's the only one on the field for 90% of the battle, and he sustains himself just fine. Of course, there are situations where he nearly ends up dying against bad enemy matchups, or the team ends up dying in a run where you're taking too long, but he's got it easier than a lot of other characters. That's why I'll be discussing teammates in the context of running triple supports and no sustain. I will also cover sustains at the end though, if that sounds more comfortable to you. First up, we have the character being hyped up as Phainon's best support, Sunday. For such a generalist support, he sure does seem like he was almost tailor-made for Phainon. I mean, their outfits are matching and everything. Real subtle, Hoyo. Phainon even has a major trace that I like to call the Sunday clause, so that he can make use of Sunday's energy-generating ultimate. But how much is Sunday actually doing for Phainon? A support's very first turn is so important in Phainon teams because the supports won't be taking many turns in general. Sunday's first turn will be his skill into ultimate. If an enemy hits him before his turn, then he'll have enough energy to ult into skill instead. This gives Phainon a total of 3 stacks for his ultimate. Every subsequent turn, Sunday will continue to spam his skill, giving 1 stack for Phainon's ultimate each time, though Sunday will generally only get 2 to 3 turns per battle in an ideal scenario. Of course, every turn he gives to Phainon translates to another 2 stacks for Phainon, thanks to the action advance, allowing Phainon to use his own skill. This means Sunday is essentially providing 5 stacks for Phainon on turn 1, the most out of any support. Then, he has the capability to provide 3 stacks on every subsequent turn of his, thanks to his skill action advancing Phainon. So what does it cost for Sunday to provide so much for Phainon? Well, Sunday is either -1 skill point if you don't have his or Brana's signature light cones, skill point neutral if you have one of the aforementioned light cones, or he can even be +1 skill point if he's able to ult into skill on his first turn with a little help from RNG enemy attacks hitting him. In terms of buffs, under the assumption that Sunday has 200% crit damage, he provides Phainon with 20% crit rate, 72% crit damage, and 30% damage bonus, which shoots up to 80% damage bonus if you can play around keeping Sunday's technique up during Phainon's first ultimate. Phainon obviously can't get the extra 50% damage from the summon requirement portion of Sunday's skill, but Sunday still does so much for Phainon in terms of both stacks and damage buffing while being smooth and comfortable to play. It's just ridiculous how good he is. He is undoubtedly Phainon's best support at the current moment in terms of strength and comfort and ease of use. Now then, what about Sunday's clone, Brana? Or I guess she was the original, which would make Sunday the clone? Regardless, her rotation is usually going to be very similar to Sunday's. Her first turn is a skill into ultimate, and after that, she'll want to spam her skill on any subsequent turns she gets. Her skill in ult provides 2 stacks for Phainon, but just like with Sunday, her action advance translates to 2 more stacks, for a total of 4 stacks on turn 1, just 1 less stack than Sunday due to Phainon having the Sunday clause. Also similar to Sunday, she has the ability to provide 3 stacks for Phainon on every subsequent turn due to her action advancing skill, although Brana is generally more skill point hungry than Sunday. Speaking of SP, Brana can cost anywhere from -2 SP to -1 SP if you have her or Sunday's signature light cone on her, or her idol on 1. She can even be completely skill point neutral, costing 0 SP if you have both her light cone and her idol in 1. There are also certain rotations where Brana actually opens up with her basic attack on her first turn, thanks to her trace advancing her forward, essentially allowing her to pay for her own skill point consumption while still maintaining enough action value to give Phainon his ultimate early into the first cycle. In these rotations, Brana's skill point intensity is alleviated even more. You can play around the speed debuff from Brana's E2 if you have it, but just know that you can also easily just ignore it, and it won't mess anything up. In terms of buffs, Brana provides 66% damage bonus from her skill, increasing to 76% thanks to her bonus trace. She provides 52% crit damage from her ult, assuming she has 200% crit damage, and 55% attack, which increases to 70% attack if Phainon gets to keep the buff from her technique during his first ultimate. Already, she's providing a lot of similar things to Sunday, but there's no need for them to compete because pairing these two together makes what is, in my opinion, the current most powerful core trio for Phainon for buffing him and stacking his ultimate the fastest. Phainon, Sunday, Brana are a power trio due to how much Phainon loves action advancing skills. The action advance alone gives him a stack, and then, of course, more turns for Phainon means he can generate more stacks for himself via his skill. The one thing I will say about Brana is that she isn't as comfortable as Sunday. There are ways of managing her skill point consumption, but even then, the fact that the buff from her skill only lasts one turn means that she requires Phainon to activate his ultimate right after she uses her skill. You lose rotation flexibility, and you can't activate his ultimate out of this turn order without losing a lot of damage. So that is the one major restriction Brana has. Even with that restriction, the damage and stacks that Brana provides are well worth it, earning her her spot right next to Sunday as Phainon's two best-in-slot supports. What about other action advancers, like Sparkle? While Sparkle provides a similar amount of stacks as Brana and Sunday on paper, her skill plus ultimate plus action advance for Phainon translates to 4 stacks on her first turn, Sparkle has always struggled when being played in double action advance teams due to the fact that her skill buff will run out. Brana also faces this issue, but Brana solves this by being played slower than Sunday, meaning her skill buff will be the last thing Phainon receives. Sparkle, unfortunately, cannot be played slower than Sunday or Brana, because then her other issue comes into play. Her action advance is only 50%. In most speed tuning scenarios, her 50% action advance won't be enough if she's being played slower than the other action advancer. But if she's being played faster than them, then her skill buff will run out. With that said, you can still make Sparkle work, and she can still provide a lot for Phainon. It'll just be difficult to pair her with Phainon's two best supports, Sunday and Brana. 4 stacks on her first turn, with 3 potential stacks on subsequent turns, thanks to having a spammable action advance on her skill, just like Sunday and Brana, is still really good. In terms of buffs, she gives 93% crit damage, assuming she has 200% crit damage, as well as 48% damage bonus from her ultimate plus talent. From her bonus trace, she'll only give 15% attack since Phainon isn't quantum. Respectable buffs, and respectable stack generation for sure, but Sparkle's real value lies in the comfort she brings via her skill point generation. You don't need to worry about skill point management with Sparkle in the team. However, she does bring her own set of issues to manage, as we discussed earlier, and that's why Sparkle isn't quite on the same level as the Sunday Brana duo for Phainon. Now that we've established the core trio of Phainon, Sunday, Brana, we have the foundation of Phainon's best team, as shown by the chart. By following this chart, you can mix and match your available options and build the best Phainon team possible. So, let's walk through each support who makes it onto the chart. First off, we'll talk about the Sunday/Brana replacement options. The main purpose of the action advancers, like Sunday and Brana, is their ability to generate stacks for Phainon's ultimate. The stack generator slot is vital for Phainon to function smoothly, and he ideally wants at least 2 of these characters on his team. Again, the best in slot duo is Sunday and Brana, but if your Sunday is busy carrying your Aglaya or Jing Yuan, or your Brana is busy with, I don't know, Zila in her bedroom, then you can choose to replace one of them with the following characters: Sparkle, Remembrance Trailblazer, and Tingyun. We've already covered Sparkle, so let's cover Remembrance Trailblazer, aka RMC, the king or queen of free-to-play supports. While RMC doesn't have an on-demand action advance like Sunday and Brana, the limited amount of turns that supports are taking in a Phainon team means that it doesn't matter very much. They'll still be able to action advance Phainon enough to make a fine replacement for Sunday and Brana's stack generation. You get essentially a free Mem action advance when Mem is first summoned on RMC's first turn, so as long as you don't screw up the timing, that's plus 3 stacks for Phainon. RMC's ultimate doesn't give a stack like Sunday and Brana, so they can't give any more stacks for Phainon's first ultimate. However, Mem will continue to gain charge during Phainon's ultimate, even when Mem isn't on the field, thanks to RMC's Idolin 4. This means that when Phainon exits his first ultimate, you can generally rely on Mem to get another action advance at some point, for a total of 2 action advances in total, which is close enough to mimicking Sunday and Brana due to how little turns the team is taking. They aren't giving as many stacks as reliably as Sunday and Brana, but the trade-off is that they're able to do all of this while being mostly skill point positive, so that's nice. In terms of buffing, RMC's buffs mainly come from Mem's true damage. Phainon will receive 36% true damage from Mem due to not using traditional energy, as well as 48% crit damage if Mem has 200% crit damage. The last replacement for Sunday and Brana is Tingyun. Now you may be confused. After all, Tingyun doesn't have an action advance in her kit, right? But you know what Tingyun does have? Lots and lots of single target buffs. Well, okay, she has 2, but there are only so many buttons in this game, and she can stack Phainon's ultimate decently well for a unit with no action advance built into her kit. Since her ultimate benefits from the Sunday clause, it can give 2 stacks for Phainon, and her skill brings that to 3 stacks in her first turn. On subsequent turns, she can choose to basic attack for skill point economy, or use her skill for another stack for Phainon. But since her skill doesn't action advance him, it's obviously less useful than Sunday or Brana. She can be played skill point negative or skill point neutral, depending on how many skill points you have to spare. She offers 50 to 56% damage bonus and 50 to 55% attack, depending on her Eidolon level. An added benefit to Tingyun is her ability to utilize Dance Dance Dance, one of the most broken light cones in the game. Since she enters battle with her ultimate fully charged, she can advance the entire team with Dance 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 as soon as the battle begins. Then, if she's built with enough speed to take multiple turns to charge her ultimate back up, she can unleash a second Dance 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 at some point after Phainon exits his first ultimate. This gives her a decent amount of action advancing in her kit for the whole team, which helps her to replace Sunday or Brana. So now that we've covered the stack generators and the replacements, it's time to move on to the last slot in Phainon's teams. This slot is the most diverse and the one most people have probably been debating about. It's no secret that Sunday and Brana are super strong for Phainon, but who pairs the best with them to make the strongest Phainon team? With Sunday and Brana charging Phainon's ultimate, his last teammate slot becomes a bit more flexible in what we're looking for. Damage buffs become a priority, as well as skill point generation. Of course, being able to charge his ultimate still matters for the 4th slot, but these other things are a big factor in determining who synergizes best into the core trio's constant turn advancing. So let's dive into the best final slots in Phainon's teams, starting with the Sunday and Brana replacements. Because yes, all 3 of them can be slotted into the last slot as well. They don't need to be Sunday and Brana replacements. They can be Sunday and Brana accompaniments as well. We've already covered what they contribute to Phainon, so there's no need to dive into it again, but I wanted to make sure to add them onto the last slot of the chart for when you're using the chart to mix and match your team building. Now, for our first new challenger to appear, we have to talk about Robin. Robin needs no introduction for how strong of a character she is. She gives 50% damage bonus from her skill, 20% crit damage from her talent, and over 1000 attack from her ultimate. While she can't directly generate any stacks for Phainon's ultimate, since none of her abilities target him, the bonkers 100% action advance from her ultimate essentially translates to more stacks for Phainon, since it also action advances Sunday and Brana, or whichever stack generator you're using with him. The downside to Robin has always been her downtime when her ultimate ends. But in an ideal Phainon rotation, he gets his first and second ultimate before her ultimate even ends, meaning she's permanently singing her heart out for the entire battle. Did you know her singing persists even in Phainon's territory, and it has this really cool echoey effect? It's really neat. Anyway, another downside to Robin is that she isn't generating any skill points for the entire battle, but as long as you manage your skill points in your rotation properly, the upsides that she brings are well worth it. Robin even has this really neat tech with Phainon, where she can hold her ultimate until he's built up enough stacks for his ultimate. Then, when you activate their ultimates back to back, with Robin's first, the rest of the team will keep their 100% action advance during Phainon's ultimate. And then when Phainon exits his ultimate, the rest of the team will immediately be ready to take action, which can be a really strong strategy to instantly charge his second ultimate after the first one. You can see this strategy play out in the footage linked in the description below. Alternatively, Robin can get enough energy for her ultimate immediately after using one skill at the start of the battle, thanks to Phainon's technique. So she can also instantly advance the whole team at the start of the battle if you're planning a strategy around that. There's a lot that you can do with Robin in the final slot, making her one of my favorite choices for Phainon. Next, let's talk about the up-and-coming character, Cypher. All of the characters on this list take into account how much they can do for Phainon for both his first and second ultimate, since he will generally need 2 ultimates in order to clear content as fast as possible, unless the environment is heavily favoring him enough to where he only needs 1 ultimate. Cypher, however, opens up the ability for Phainon to start clearing content in just 1 ultimate. Since Cypher's ultimate damage is based on the amount of damage your team does, Phainon gives her some crazy stacks for her ultimate damage due to the massive meteors he's checking out during his ultimate. This allows Cypher to completely nuke a boss's HP bar after Phainon exits his first ultimate, essentially skipping the need for Phainon to charge up a second ultimate. And it's not like that's the only thing she offers. Cypher can be completely skill point positive while passively causing all enemies to take 40% increased damage just for existing. However, if you don't have the investment or the damage to skip a second Phainon ultimate with Cypher's ultimate, then the team up probably isn't worth it. It is a very cool strategy, however, and I thought Cypher still deserved to make it onto the list. Also, she doesn't charge his ultimate at all, which is part of why the team will start to lag behind the other teams if you end up needing a second ultimate. Next up, we have Ruan-Mei. While at first she doesn't seem to do much for Phainon, it should be noted that Phainon's teams oversaturate him on attack and damage percent and crit buffs. He gets so many of these stats from so many different sources, and it causes some of the more unique buffs to gain a ton of value. Unique buffs such as the resistance penetration on Ruan-Mei's ultimate. With a combination of 25% res pen and 68% damage bonus in her kit, Ruan-Mei makes Phainon do some pretty ridiculous damage, buffing him more than a lot of the other characters on the chart, mainly thanks to that juicy res pen. Her ultimate also counts for 1 stack for Phainon's ultimate, since it still targets him, letting her contribute to his stacking at least a little bit. As for other utilities Ruan-Mei provides, her speed buff can be really helpful to alleviate the pain of building hyperspeed on Sunday and Brana. Just note that it doesn't affect Phainon's speed during his ultimate, and while she doesn't instantly get her ultimate the way Tingyun does, she can still be a decent holder of Dance Dance Dance. Aside from the damage buffs she gives him, Ruan-Mei's increased weakness break efficiency really shines in Apocalyptic Shadow, which is mainly where I would choose to use her, if at all, in Phainon teams. And last but not least, there's her, Tribby. At first, Tribby might seem like a waste of space on Phainon teams. She doesn't have a single ability that can target Phainon and stack his ultimate. She's contributing a grand total of 0 stacks for his ultimate. However, just like we discussed with Ruan-Mei, any unique buffs that Phainon can get his hands on is a huge boost to his damage because of how many generic buffs he's getting for crit, damage, and attack. And Tribby is the queen of unique buffs. 24% res pen and 30% increased damage taken by enemies, all for free, with 100% uptime and no restrictions. Phainon will gladly eat that up. Tribby is by far the strongest buffer for Phainon when it comes to pure damage, even stronger than Yukong, who we will be discussing in a bit. When Phainon is trying to brute force content that doesn't have physical weakness, Tribby's res pen buffs become even stronger and widen the damage gap between her and the other supports even more. Obviously, the trade-off for Tribby's insane damage boost is the fact that she generates 0 stacks for Phainon's ultimate. But even so, she has ways of indirectly contributing to help the team. For instance, Tribby can abuse Dance 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 just as effectively as Tingyun, since she starts the battle with a fully charged ultimate thanks to her major trace plus Phainon's technique. But that's not all. Part of what makes Tingyun so good with Dance 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 is her ability to generate enough energy for herself to unleash a second Dance 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 proc on the second wave. Well, did you know that Tribby's energy generating trace persists even when she's kicked off the field during Phainon's ultimate? This means that while Phainon is in his ultimate, all of his attacks will charge Tribby's ultimate via her major trace. And thus, when Phainon exits his first ultimate, Tribby usually has enough energy to also manage a second Dance 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 proc at some point during the second wave, sometimes needing some help from RNG enemy attacks. Either way, the double team-wide action advance indirectly helps Tribby contribute to more stacks for Phainon by advancing his stack generators. Furthermore, Tribby may not have any skills to use to stack Phainon's ultimate, but this also means she's played completely skill point positive, and having more skill points thanks to Tribby can also translate to more stacks for Phainon if the extra skill points allow him to squeeze out one extra skill that he might have not gotten otherwise. Between these micro utilities and the massive damage boost she brings to Phainon, Tribby ends up feeling like a much stronger teammate than you might expect. I especially felt Tribby's strength in Pure Fiction because his ultimate lasts so long in it, and her superior buffing numbers really added up. Pure Fiction favored Tribby even more because there's more small enemies for more hit RNG to help make up for the fact that Tribby can't charge Phainon's ultimate herself. The enemies do the charging for Phainon, and then he can just revel in the larger damage Tribby gives him during his ultimate. And even more so, Tribby's energy generating trace scales on how many enemies get hit, and Phainon is constantly hitting 5 targets in Pure Fiction, which charges her ultimate even faster than in other game modes, meaning she's definitely getting 2 Dance 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 procs in Pure Fiction. How ironic is it that even while she isn't on the field, and even while she can't contribute her own personal damage, Tribby is still the absolute GOAT in Pure Fiction. Of course, outside of Pure Fiction, charging his second ultimate can be more RNG heavy for Tribby, but hey, that's the trade-off for her massive damage buffs. And I promise this isn't just me glazing Tribby. I'm a Tribby skipper. I skipped her on her first banner, and I'll be skipping her on her rerun banner. But I can't deny that the damage Phainon was putting out with Tribby during my testing was really satisfying, and noticeably larger than any other support on this list. Of course with her own caveats that I discussed here. Now, let me discuss some supports that didn't make the list. First off is Jiaoqiu. While Jiaoqiu is another character who provides vulnerability debuffs, which are super rare for Phainon, he wasn't as powerful as Tribby in my tests. His numbers are just smaller than hers at a baseline, and he doesn't have any of the indirect utility Tribby has with her Dance 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 abusing capabilities, making stacking Phainon's ultimate even more miserable with Jiaoqiu. He can still work, especially in Pure Fiction, where enemies can help charge Phainon's ultimate, but I wouldn't put him high on the priority list for a Phainon team. And then there's Yukong. How should I put this? Yukong is a scam. Yukong has always been a scam. Do not buy into Yukong propaganda. Don't you dare do it. I've actually decided to dedicate a whole other video to Yukong and why she's fake news with Phainon because I was rambling about her too long in this video, so look forward to that. But just know that Yukong is not on this list for a reason. Again, do not buy into the Yukong propaganda. Last but not least, let's briefly talk about sustains. As I stated earlier, sustains don't feel nearly as necessary for Phainon as they are for other characters. Phainon himself doesn't need a sustain, so the sustain would mostly be there for your harmony units during the small window where they're on the field and vulnerable. For sustains to be useful, they have to at least be able to help charge Phainon's ultimate, which is pretty much the only value of the likes of Gallagher, Lynx, Luocha, and Aventurine. They're sustain units who are able to provide some stacks for Phainon at least. Wohuo is the only sustain who is providing more than mere stacks and sustain. Well, okay. Part of her appeal is that her ultimate provides more stacks than other sustains due to benefiting from the Sunday clause, but her attack buff is obviously nice as well. And that's pretty much all there is to say about sustains. Sustainless really just feels like the way Phainon is meant to be played, for the time being. So now that we have the entire chart filled out, this is how team building for Phainon works. Pick 2 stack generators from the first row. Obviously, this is the illusion of choice, because is it really a choice when Sunday and Brana are in the best in slot category? Obviously, you'll prioritize those 2 above all else. However, the replacement slot exists just in case. Sunday isn't free after all. After you've chosen your 2 stack generators, you pick 1 character from the last slot to fill out the rest of your roster. There are pros and cons to each of these characters, so go ahead and look back at what each of them are offering Phainon and consider which of their benefits you value more. In my opinion, it often ends up being matchup dependent, meaning it depends on the enemy and environment you're facing. In general, I found myself having the easiest time clearing using Robin and Tribi. Surprise, surprise, the 5-star limited harmony units are broken. But the free-to-play friendly options like Ting Yun and Remembrance Trailblazer are more than capable of giving Phainon everything he needs. And they're oftentimes even more consistent for the trade-off of slightly less damage. Don't feel pressured to pull for Robin or Tribi just for Phainon or anything. Something tells me he'll have his own new tailor-made support coming out for him very soon. So, there's your guide to Phainon's teammates, and the priority in which he needs them. If you follow the guidelines set for you by the chart, then you can mix and match characters as you see fit, and you can't go wrong with building the best Phainon team available to you. If you have any questions, or would like to know more about a specific teammate or team comp, go ahead and ask me in the comments below, or feel free to DM me on my Twitter or my Discord, both of which will be in the video description. And here's a reminder that the early footage of Phainon using a bunch of different support variations following this team building chart is also linked in the description below. So go ahead and check that out if you want to see some of the different teams in action. Do note that support Eidolons can tip the scale in their favor, such as E1 Robin or E1 Tribi. However, I think that goes without saying. Thank you so much for watching, and if this video was helpful, or at least interesting to you, consider hitting the like button. If you want more content like this, including a Phainon build guide, as well as continued coverage of his changes throughout the beta, then consider subscribing to this channel. If his team building priorities change as he gets adjustments in the beta, I'll definitely be making an updated follow-up video to this one. And any support at all would really mean a lot to me. If you've watched this far into the video, that alone already means the world to me. Sunday may be Phainon's best support, but you, dear viewer, you are my best support. I hope you have a wonderful time farming for Phainon, or doing whatever you're doing, and may all Phainon wanters successfully pull him early. Until next time!